So we are recording again. Good morning, everybody. 10 o'clock in the morning, a little bit after 10. This is the first AskTOM session, office hour. Sorry, so many sessions. Database cloud service office hours. So welcome. My name is Pastijn, coming you from the Netherlands. And this is the first of the generic Q&A, open Q&A sessions in the system. And we try to give you information on a various number of subjects. I chose a very generic one, which was the Oracle Database Cloud session, which is, very open, very generic. I'm not sure how many people will have questions. We will see whether or not it works. And hopefully everything works. So I've got one report already from Kasim saying I can't hear you, but it was 1 minute to 10. I see my little green microphone flickering up and down, so that must mean that somebody is listening to me. I know it's not my wife; she's not at home right now, so that's it. Okay, so how do these sessions work? So the original setup right now is that we can have three kinds of questions. We can have three kinds of sessions. We can have very open Q&A sessions like this one. We can also have sessions where we do a small presentation on a certain subject. That's an option, and then we can have a discussion or a Q&A afterwards. Or we can do a large presentation with a small Q&A at the end. So it all depends on what the customer wants, what you want, people who joined actually want. So just let us know what you would like to see. So for the Q&A sessions, usually the moment you register, we really hope that you have a burning question, or that you want to see something or hear about something, or want to see a short demonstration of something. So the option is there, and we highly recommend you to do that, is that when you register for one of these sessions, they're all free, you know that, you can pre-submit a question or a subject when you register one of the sessions. And it makes it much easier for us as presenters, because we have a clue in the beginning what you want to talk about. So that's always nice. Those questions will be answered first, of course. In the same time, I've got on my right side, looking at the left right now, it's all nice with mirrored images. On my right, I've got the Q&A or the chat box open. And very sneaky, I put my good friend and colleague Adrian on the line as well as co-host. So maybe if he has an answer to one of your questions, then he might answer it, or I might answer it, but then I have to type and I won't be able to look at you in the camera. So sometimes I can show you something, or I can demonstrate something. So I'm not sure how many people will join, how many questions there will be. You can ask questions. If there are no questions, I've got 2 or 3 lines that how do you say that? I noticed when I was playing with the Oracle Database Cloud Services. We do regular trainings as a team. We do proof of concepts. And as such, you realize that especially the GUI changes sometimes on a daily basis. So it's not really that the functionality behind it has such a very massive impact, but it's sometimes the GUI changes. So far, only for the better. So I'm really happy with that. And so those are the things. So let me quickly show you the second slide, which is also very important, is that one of the things we want to be very sure of, that people realize that these sessions are not substitutions for my Oracle support. So we can't really help you with bugs or problems or issues. Maybe you can ask the question, but there might be an answer saying, well, please log on my Oracle support service request. It's not that we want to get rid of you. I would like to solve every problem I can find, but sometimes we need to involve other people in solving issues. And the generic approach and how do you say that, the thing we all agreed upon inside Oracle, inside development, inside product management, is that we want to gather all the issues and all the log files and all the screenshots and things like that in one centralized location. And that would be for us my Oracle support. So if there is an issue that somebody from product management or development or even from pre-sales or sales needs to help you with, the best thing is always log a my Oracle support ticket. And then the moment you start asking questions, you say, oh, I've got a problem, it's service request this and this. Most of us have full access to my Oracle support, so we can actually read those requests, and we've got all the information in one place. So what do you have? You're welcome to share codes or secrets with us on these office hours. But like I said, I've got 40 people registered today. I'm not sure how many people would join, but well, let's say the best scenario is that all 40 joined and 20 extra. That means if you send a very secret password or a very secret piece of code onto the chat or something like that, that everybody might be able to keep it for you. Okay, I'm going to skip one down. Database cloud service, welcome. Yeah, you have to put something on slide. I mean, I could have put a safe harbor statement here as well, that we try to do our best to tell you the truth and nothing but the truth. But we are humans, and I might either say something which is a little bit not correct and I get corrected by somebody else, or Oracle decides to move into a different direction. So you can never put anything we say into a contract or anything into a lawsuit or something like that. So first, my small introduction, just to keep on some time. Introduction, my name is Robert Pastijn, working in the Netherlands for Oracle since 2000, working with Oracle since 1996. And I like to play with databases, networking, Linux operating system, things like that. I'm part of the Oracle Database product management team. I don't really manage a part of the product, so I'm not for multi-tenant, that's Patrick Wheeler, or any of the other specific subjects. I'm more like a generic product manager, if you want to put it that way. And I try to share my knowledge. I think that's the biggest goal in life I have, at least in my working life, is to share knowledge. So let's have a look at the questions. What's the difference between OCI Classic and OCI? That's a question that Silver asks. Well, OCI Classic is a fully virtualized setup. Was starting in I think I see that Adrian is already answering the question, but I'll do it out loud as well. OCI Classic was started as a fully virtualized environment. So you've got a virtualized system running on Zen, on Oracle Virtual Server. And everything you do, like I said, is virtualized. Networking is virtualized on the boxes itself. The storage is virtualized, although we now have some SSD options, but especially for the database, everything is still fully virtualized. So that's starting point number one. And then starting point number two was the OCI version. And OCI version was started to be a bare metal system. So no layers of virtualization, because we believe that the database needed full speed ahead, not hindered by any form of virtualization, because, well, no matter how you put it, no matter how small it is, virtualization will always have a slowdown there. And one of the biggest changes was, well, database bare metal. We could run this on local disks, on local NVMe drives, basically, so PCI cards in the slot. So I would say the biggest difference between OCI Classic and OCI is performance for the database. It's the speed of access to the disks. That's one. And the other one is speed of access to the network card. And then later on, we introduced the OCI virtual machine. So you can now run a database on a bare metal machine, but you can also run a database on a virtual machine. And the big difference between the virtual machines on OCI, so on the bare metal version, or on OCI Classic, is the way we mount the disks. That's one. On OCI, we mount the disks through iSCSI. And on OCI Classic, we mount the disks through virtual I/O driver. And that's kind of nice, because they recently made updates for the virtual I/O driver on OCI Classic. So there was a patch recommendation going out. Everybody should update their patches and kernel version and drivers and things like that. But still, on OCI Classic, so on the first one, you had to go through a virtualization driver to go to the disks. And OCI, we either went straight into the disks, or we went through iSCSI, and the iSCSI went through the network, and the network went down through a virtual I/O driver, which is much, much faster than we have on OCI Classic. So I would say, as a database person, is that OCI Classic runs to a certain amount of megabytes and IOs per second, and then that OCI starts at the same number of OCI megabytes per second, and then it can increase to gigabytes per second if you want to go into local flash drives. Both solutions are fully working in a form that they are still actively developed on. When I first heard that they were talking about OCI Classic, I thought, well, oh, that will be our previous version and it will be phased out or something like that. But I was very quickly corrected by the people who know about these things. And they said, no, OCI Classic and OCI will still continue side by side. They will still be fully, completely developed upon, especially because a lot of our other platform as a service setups are still only available on OCI Classic. So we still need the performance and the quality and the patching and the, well, stability for those services. So recently, for example, the Java as a service was released on the OCI environments, but all the other platform as a service environments we have, like container and things like that, they are all available. Let me quickly shut down my phone. Let me do it like this, do not disturb. So those are the biggest differences, I would say. Documentation, well, the documentation is mostly in the normal Oracle docs. It doesn't really state what you have underneath. I would say it's like buying a car. I mean, I'm not a big fan of cars in a way that I have books and magazines about cars, but it's usually I reference buying a car. If somebody comes up to me and says, I want a car, then the first question you're going to ask this person is, what are you going to use the car for? Is it just for bringing yourself 300 meters down the road to your work because you hate working? Then you can do with the smallest car that's there. I mean, in Holland, we would say take a bike, but you can do with the smallest car. But if it means that you have to travel up and down from the top of Norway all to the south of Spain, for example, and you have to do that twice a week, then probably I would recommend you a much more comfortable or a more economic car. I mean, I wouldn't probably recommend you an electric car because it stops after 400 kilometers or something like that. I would probably recommend you something else. If you need to travel with a lot of cargo, then either you should do a pickup truck or at least one that can pull something. And it's basically the same with database. If you're looking for the best possible performance, then you can either go for an Exadata system, available in both clouds, by the way, both in OCI Classic, both in OCI and in OCI. But if you want to have a single instance database, the fastest thing we offer right now is the database bare metal version. And this database bare metal version with the local NVMe drives is very flexible, very open. But then you pay a little bit extra, I think about $2,000-3,000 a month or something like that, because you are renting the whole bare metal system and not just a part of it like you do with virtualization. So money-wise, the most cheapest version would be an Exadata Express, so which is one account with one. So it all depends on what you need and what you would do. So I'm going back to the system right now. Let me see, OCI is a classic. Adrian already answered this one. Can you tell us more about the Oracle data centers in EMEA? That's from Santiago. Are all those data centers able to provide OCI Classic and OCI? Well, the answer is no. We've got currently, there is a nice slide where it shows you exactly where what is, but basically, to my knowledge, we now have the United Kingdom. There's a big discussion going on whether or not we can still call England Europe or not, and is it under the European data laws and things like that. At this moment it is, but we have to wait until the Brexit ends. So we've got two data centers in the UK, one in London, one in Slough, if I'm completely correct. And we've got a third data center in Amsterdam. So those are the 3 data centers we have. So if you're looking at a pure post-Brexit setup, the OCI Classic data centers is on basically only Amsterdam. And pre-Brexit, the OCI Classic data centers are London, Slough, and Amsterdam. So those are the 3. So the only OCI data center we have right now is Frankfurt. That's the only data center that has 3 availability domains. So if you're looking for high availability in your environment, you can go as well to either Frankfurt with one AD to another AD, or you can do Amsterdam replicating to England or something like that, to London or to Slough or things like that. But well, keep the whole Brexit thing in mind. I haven't got a clue what the definite the rules will be after the Brexit has been completed, but we'll see that. So those are the three data centers we have. There's one OCI data center being built right now in Slough, if I'm correct, in the United Kingdom. That one will be OCI, so both OCI Classic and OCI. I'm not sure if they're in the same location, physical location, but the region is called Slough, so that's there. That was the question from Santiago. If you have any other questions, just put them on the chat. Either Adrian or myself will give you an answer on that one. And then, well, hopefully it will make your life a little bit easier. It would be nice. Okay, so in the meantime, before you have any questions, things that I noticed a couple of days last week, basically, is that the GUI has been changing again on OCI Classic, which is really nice. I'm not sure if everybody have seen the GUI on Classic and the GUI on OCI. So if you want to see the difference between those two, then we can talk about that. So GUI change on OCI. I'm not sure if I can show you the difference in GUI right now. I can try to show you the GUI as it is right now. Let me quickly move one screen to another one. Let's see if I have this one. Oh, it's this one. And then I'll show you in a moment. I'll share my screen in a moment when I've got the thing in front of me that I want to have. So let me say new share. It's this one. Basically, so you now should be able to see my screen on. So this has been slightly changed. So whatever was here on this side, they now put on the top side of these things. That is interesting. You probably see my little thingy here. So this is, well, they added the whole IP reservations thing. So you can, from the database cloud service, they try to minimize the steps you have to do to actually set things up. So in the past, when you wanted to add some IP reservations, you first had to go to the compute node, and then from the compute node, you were able to come back to this one and use IP reservations. Nowadays, you can just set up IP reservations, and we'll talk about SSH access and things like that on the system activity. So it's been, well, some things are still the same. If you click on this one, will be the same. So I saw a question flipping by from Falik. He asked me privately, and Falik asked me, how does Oracle save data? You have to be a little bit more specific on that. Is it inside the database, or do you mean private data, or do you mean credit card information when we talk about these things? So if you have more specific question, then I can answer that one. So let's go back to this normal thing. So there are some patches for Meltdown and Spectre. I got some emails in here. Share my thing again. Let's do this one. There are some patches available for the Meltdown and Spectre setup. I think it's the UEK, the Unbreakable Enterprise Kernel 4 latest release will have the bugs in there. Or the fixes for the bugs in there. Well, the other ones already had the bugs in there, but the fixes for the bugs in there. And it's highly recommended that you update all your cloud information to the latest UEK kernel, if possible, on the system. So that would be best. There was a mail going around, and I was very happily surprised by the way Oracle actually send out this information to everybody. So, well, read the mail. If you don't have the mail, you can send me an email if you want, so I can forward it to you, so you can have a look at what's there. Another thing I was also pleasantly surprised by is some performance enhancements that were created a while back for OCI Classic, where they started to update the drivers that were needed to access the disks underneath. And they sent you some new driver options, some updates, some kernel settings, and things like that to make the performance of your systems better. That, for me, proves that Oracle is continuously enhancing these setups on the system. So I was very happy with that. Any other questions? I see we've got about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 people on the line. If there are no questions, I would say, well, let me know the questions. That's why we are here. I do a little dance or something like that, but I don't think that's really good. So questions would be very nice. In the meantime, yeah, we are working on some enhancements. What I see, I can set up quickly the system again. Let me quickly share this one with you. This one, yeah, share this one with you. Put my own face out of the way like this. So this looks basically, I think that the GUI has been enhanced. Create instance GUIs has been there step by step in the system. What I like as well is this whole notification email where you can actually say, I would like to have an email sent to me the moment my database is ready. So it makes it easy for you. You don't have to constantly refresh the environment. Other things on this information, maybe you already know about this, but you can only select extreme performance when you have to select extreme performance if you want to do things with DataGuard, for example, and RAC at the same time. You have to do a different session, so you should be able to do the extreme performance ones. So I'll cancel this one, I'll log out and choose another one just to be sure. Okay. Let's see if this works. Oh, I even have to change my passwords. Excuse me, what is? You see, we are very secure. Oh, almost. You see, this always happens if you do something live. There we are. Okay, so if I say create instance on this side, there we are. So I can do extreme performance and then I can do database clustering with RAC. So that's the thing you have to keep in the back of your mind. Always very nice. I'll give it a name. Why not? Let's do something stupid. You choose the data center you want to play in this case, USCOM Central. And there you can set up everything you want to. One of the nice things they have changed is if you want to set up a backup in the OCI Classic setup, they already pre-created the storage container for you. You can, of course, change the name. This is now DBAAS, but you can change the name of the container if you want to. I think this is a huge improvement because people were constantly struggling with get that information in there. So for the rest, everything basically has changed. So I see one or two questions coming up. I see a question from Silver asking, I heard that we must use transparent data encryption if we want to run databases in the Oracle Cloud. Is it true? Yes, that is true. You have to keep in the back of your mind that your data is stored on disks. It could be flash cards, flash disk, NVMe drives, or it could be physical disks. So if one of those disks would be broken, Oracle staff will replace that disk, and the old disk, which may be in predictive failure or whatever, there is still data on there. So we try to erase that data, we flash it, we clear it, and things like that. But just to make sure that there is no data lost in your environment, we offer the option, and we make it mandatory. There are ways to disable it if you want to, but by default, all databases in the cloud that we offer to customers all have transparent data encryption enabled. So it's not a licensable thing. You don't have to pay for it. So the price for transparent data encryption is included in your license. There's no advanced security pack or something like that that you have to pay for. But all your data from that moment on is encrypted in the cloud. So if somebody would steal a backup from you, or somebody would get hold of one of the disks that your data was on, then at least all that data has been encrypted on the system. Performance-wise, it doesn't really make that much of a difference because the version of the CPUs that we are using in the system and the physical hardware system all have the hardware encryption module enabled. So the overhead that it takes to encrypt and decrypt the data on the disks, I think it's roughly about 1 or 2% of the system. Whereas in the old days, it would have been 20 or 30% or so of the CPU power, because it needed to be encrypted and decrypted. Nowadays, it's done in the CPU as part of the hardware of the CPU, so there's only 1 or 2% overhead. There's no price additionally for transparent data encryption. The only downside is, what I notice, is that during administration, the DBA has to be much more focused on the fact that the data is encrypted and that the encryption key is very important. So encryption key by default stored on the system itself. If needed, you can put it on premise as well, so there's no encryption key on the system itself. So those are all the options. Personally, I think that we haven't done enough with encrypting our data, especially looking at all the amount of problems and hacks and breaches and things like that there are in the computer world. And I think that all databases should be encrypted with transparent data encryption. And it's only a matter of time before everybody understands completely how it works with encryption. We try to make it as easy as possible for you in 12.2, our most recent database. It's the best way of encrypting, but also managing the encryption store. But yes, to answer your question in a short way, yes, you have to use transparent data encryption. The moment you import a database which is not encrypted through PDB import or transportable table spaces, for example, your database will give you warnings saying this and this table space has not been encrypted. So there will be warnings. And about half a year to a year ago, the system actually refused to start to mount if it wasn't encrypted. They removed that restriction, so you can now have an imported table space unencrypted. But we still highly recommend and almost push you to use transparent data encryption in the cloud. So I hope that's answered your question. Applies to both OCI Classic and to OCI, by the way. So that's the easiest way. Question from Falik. Database architecture, how Oracle handle user sessions and other data requests like DML or other selection. Well, Oracle is a relational database, so when you ask a question to the Oracle database, it will sort out the data that it needs. It will decrypt the blocks from disks, put it into its memory, sort out using the SQL which data you would like to see, and will send it back to you to the client session. And sending it back to the client session could either be on a non-encrypted session, or you can use TPCS, so secure TPC, which is basically an SSL, but then over TCP. So the data both inside the database, the data inside the connection between A and B are all encrypted. The moment you receive it in the application, it will be readable for your application unless you have decided in your application that you want to use encrypted data. That could be an option. And the data in the SGA of the database is also unencrypted at that moment because, well, else it cannot do any querying on the data. But the moment we write stuff to disk, to the table spaces, everything will be encrypted. I hope that is an answer to your question, Falik. If not, let me know, and then we can sort things out. So let me see. No other questions. We will see what we get. So apart from Exadata machines from VG, what are the servers which are used for hosting the database? And does OCI use functions architecture? I must be very honest. I don't know what you mean by functions architecture. Maybe Adrian knows this, but if not, in all, please send me an email, and VG, please do that after the session, and I will sort out your questions and send you the answer. In the beginning, apart from the Exadata machines, which are the servers, well, the servers that we use are basically the same ones as we use for the Exadata machine. So it's not an Exadata machine that's running. We only use the compute node, and internally they are called X5, X6, and X7. If I am correct, in the OCI cloud, I know we are using X5 as the major bulk. The X7 machine, which is the latest machine we have, similar like the Exadata X7. The X7 machines are in the United States. They are enabled in, well, they are available in Frankfurt and available in United Kingdom. And I heard that somewhere this month we will have X7 machines enabled in Frankfurt and in the United Kingdom OCI as well. Systems underneath the OCI Classic, that varies between X5, X6 and X7. Depends on which one you get. The core capacity is relatively the same. So I would say for Classic it doesn't really matter that much. On the bare metal systems it will matter because the X5 systems at this moment have, if you do it virtualized, 7 gigabytes per OCPU that you enable. If we are starting to run X7 systems, we'll have 15 gigabytes per OCPU enabled. So that's a doubling of the memory if we use database systems virtualized in OCI. Also, of course, for the bare metal systems. For the bare metal system, if you run database on X5, you have 36 cores available and 512 gigabytes of RAM. If you take the same database but then run it on an X7 system, bare metal, you will have 52 cores from the top of my mind and 768 gigabytes of memory. So we have more memory, more cores, and also the storage systems we have underneath will be larger, about double the size. So the NVMe drives will double in space as well. I think we first had 9 times 3.2 terabytes for the high density ones, and on X7 we will have 8 times 6.4 terabytes from the top of my mind. So those X7 systems are not enabled right now on OCI. They will be enabled in the near future, and then we'll see what we have had. In OCI in the past, when we started OCI, we used ODAs as well, Oracle Data ODA systems, Oracle Database Appliance systems, especially for the replication cluster setups, the bare metal replication cluster setups. Those will be phased out, so in the near future there will not be any bare metal database clusters anymore. We can only do virtualized rack clusters. They're still running on NVMe disks, so the speed is still fantastic, but the real bare metal system will not be there anymore. So same like high density I/O will be gone, and we only have, well, you had 0 NVMe, a bit of NVMe, and all of the NVMe. The middle one will be gone. I always forget if that's the high density or the high throughput version. But then again, we will have the largest amount of NVMe disks available. Let me see. Sorry, the functions architecture. I'll have a look at the. I see that's cloud.google.com functions. If you send me an email, VG, my email address will be at the back of this presentation. Please send me an email about that, and I'll give you a statement because I have to look into it, and I usually don't do these things during an office hour session. Let's see how we are halfway. So Falik says, I'm new in the Oracle Cloud. Can you give a small introduction? That's one. Ayapan says, great session. Thank you very much. Will you be able to explain the difference between OCI and OCI Classic at a high level? Okay, new to Oracle Cloud. Well, I'll try to answer both of your questions at the same time. So once upon a time, there was a company, I will not name any names, that decided to offer compute images in the cloud. And in the beginning, they didn't think that it would be that interesting because everybody wanted to keep their information on premise, but we saw that there was more and more people interested in the cloud. So our great leader, we have several leaders, but well, since I started working for Oracle in 2000, I still have one great leader. Our great leader, it's almost like a religion. Our great leader said, well, in the beginning he said, well, cloud is not that interesting. Later on he decided cloud is interesting. So he started to port all of the Oracle options we have, Oracle software we have, into a centralized data center and called it the Oracle Cloud. So we started with software as a service. So if you want to have any business suite in the cloud, or you want to have a PeopleSoft in the cloud, you want to have something else in the cloud, you just bought an X number of users access, and you got a URL, you got a username, password, and things like that. You were able to use the business suite without any install on your local systems. As a second stage, we try to put all of our development or middleware software we have into the cloud. So that resulted in a WebLogic server where you just have to pay the price for renting the server, setting up the WebLogic environment, and you can run a WebLogic environment. What else do we have? We have Golden Gate in the cloud. We have business intelligence in the cloud. So basically the Oracle Cloud is either software as a service, Oracle software running as a service. You just have to log in, username, password, no maintenance, no whatsoever. Second layer of Oracle Cloud would be platform as a service, where we offer you all the all the parts of software that we usually do on premise. For me, that's database, but also things like Enterprise Manager, things like WebLogic, things like business intelligence, Hadoop clusters, whatever you want to do. Anything with the software label on it, you can now rent in the cloud, basically. Even things like MySQL, open source software, you can run MySQL in the cloud. And last but not least, we have infrastructure as a service. So infrastructure as a service is very high level, basically the same type of offering as Amazon does and Google does. You just get an IP address, you get an operating system, could be Windows, could be CentOS, could be Oracle Linux, could be, I'm not even sure if it can be Red Hat Linux, but anything that is compatible with an Intel setup is available for you and you can log in. So that's very roughly the Oracle Cloud. So why should you choose the Oracle Cloud? That's also a very, very big discussion. For me, as a database person, there are basically two reasons why you should use, well, maybe three reasons. 2 or 3 reasons why you should definitely choose the Oracle Cloud. One, for the database, the bare metal machines we have in Frankfurt and 2 or 3 other locations in the world, absolutely the fastest single instance databases we have looking at performance. Like I've played with other cloud providers and I've chosen their fastest disks they had. And the moment I switched to even the virtualized versions of the one we have, our performance, our throughput, our IOs per second, our megabytes per second are way faster than we have with our competitors. So that's one of the things I would say. For speed, you have to go to the Oracle Database Cloud, no discussion. The second thing I'm very proud of is the fact that we only charge you per hour. Not only the compute stuff that our competitors are doing as well, but also for the database licenses. And database licenses are not the cheapest thing in the world. I mean, for one CPU, which is 2 cores, I think the list price last time I checked was $47,000 or something like that. So if you want to play a little bit with an Oracle database, you don't want to pay $47,000 plus support just for a month or 2 months of play. If you go to the Oracle Cloud, you just, the moment you enable a virtual machine, when you start a virtual machine, that's the moment where you pay for the license you have. It can either be very static, like it runs for 24/7, but again, if you take those bare metal machines, you can actually say, well, 8 o'clock in the morning, I want to go to 10 cores, and then at 5 o'clock in the morning, in the evening, I go back to 2 cores again. And then during the night, you only pay for the 2 cores. In the morning, you enable the 10 cores again, and then you start paying for the 10 cores again. So the price is very flexible, very easy to predict, I would say. And last time I had somebody who had a rack cluster on-premise. He didn't have a test environment, and I said, well, how do you test your patches? And they say, well, we don't. I said, well, they're now moving to the Oracle Cloud. And he asked me, he said, well, I'm going from a cluster on-premise to a cluster in the cloud. You asked me once how I can test my patches and how can I do that in the cloud? I said, well, very easy. You just start up a second cluster. The moment it runs, you run your patches, you test your patches. When it works, you just delete, destroy your test instance again. You don't have to pay for it. So you can just test your patches. So it's much easier to test your patches. On top of that, the patches have already been tested on the database cloud. And I would say those are the 3 things that I think are very interesting. So it's performance is one, the fact that you can, you're only built for what you actually use. So you can start up and shut down things like you want to. And the third one is, well, it's also a little bit licensing wise. It's even if you have on-premise license, you can put them in our cloud and they will give you more licensing than you can put it in one of our competitor clouds. So those are the 2-3 things that I think you should use, database in the cloud and the Oracle database in the cloud. I mean, underneath, we're a cloud provider. We try to do our best to give you the best performance and the latest systems and the latest options. So Oracle Cloud is a cloud provider with the emphasis on cloud from Oracle and the Oracle software. And we try to make it easier for you to work with Oracle software in our cloud, both with connections, but also with pricing and licensing. So that would be a very short, high-level indication. Let me see. Difference between OCI and OCI Classic. I did that in the beginning of the session, so I will do it very quickly. OCI Classic is a fully virtualized cloud environment. Everything you do is virtualized, running on Zen virtualization. And disks are virtualized, the storage is virtualized, the network is virtualized, and the instances are virtualized. So that's one side of the deal. On the other side, we have OCI, started out as bare metal systems. So the bare metal environment with bare metal, really fully bare metal system, not a piece of Oracle component on it, no monitoring tools, no nothing. You can even see the background control plane and well, temperature of the fans and whatever you want to do is really bare metal. That's what we started out with, and then there was a huge demand to add on the bare metal side a kind of virtualization. The thing I always remembered is that when you want to have a bare metal system, you have to pay for the full machine. So basically for the hardware that is running, the power that it's using, and etc. etc. If you want to run a database, that makes sense. So in a database in OCI, you only have to enable those CPUs that you actually use. So if you only need 4 OCPUs, you can rent a full bare metal system and only pay for those 4 OCPUs on the system. You can scale up and scale down without any downtime that system. So you can really, with one command, either through REST API, through a command line, or through a GUI, you can say now enable 8 OCPUs or 12 OCPUs all the way up to 36 or 52 in the next generation. And you can also scale down those CPUs. Whatever happens in a bare metal environment, you always have the full amount of memory at your disposal, and you always have the full amount of storage at your disposal. So that was the bare metal system. Great for running databases. If you run an application server on top of it, you can choose between a bare metal system again, but then you have to always pay the full 52 cores that are enabled, or 36 cores that are enabled on the system. And some people say, well, 32 cores enabled for a WebLogic thingy for only 2 OCPUs, a little bit much. So then they decided to enable virtual machines on top of bare metal. So those virtual machines on top of bare metal run on the same hardware, not on the same machine, of course, but on the same type of hardware. The storage is always it's always NVMe. Either if you rent a full box, it's local NVMe, or if you run a virtualized machine, it's NVMe accessed through iSCSI. That's always NVMe, so that's a nice thing. So that is very roughly the difference between OCI Classic and OCI. OCI Classic started out as fully virtualized based on Xen, so it's not KVM, it's Xen server in the background, Oracle Virtual Machine if you want to, Oracle Virtual Server if you want to be very specific, but it's based on Xen, on the open source Xen with some Oracle tweaks on it. That's OCI Classic. OCI is built on bare metal systems. And inside those bare metal systems, you can choose to have a virtual machine, which is, and this is where my gray area starts, but I think that one is built on KVM, like Silver says, but that's on OCI. OCI Classic, definite. Xen, OCI, definite. I would say 80% definite. KVM. Doesn't really matter, you don't see that last option. So how does OCI get on with Docker? At this moment, I'm not really sure, and I'm pretty much, I think, and Docker is more like an infrastructure as a service thing. It's not really a database thing, so that's the reason why it's a gray area to me. But I don't think that OCI by default offers you a container service. So you can't go to the GUI and say, give me another container. Having said this, the moment you have a bare metal system to your disposal, and I even think if you do it on a VM, you can run your own Docker in there. So you can have your own Docker instance, but you have to install it yourself. It's not there by default, as far as I know. On OCI Classic, I know there is a container service available, so you can run Docker and a lot of other things on OCI Classic directly from the GUI. But on OCI, it is supported, but it's not backed up by a GUI at this moment. You have to do everything yourself. Honestly, but it is supported, so that's a good thing. Let me see. Oh, Adrian already sorted out the Google functions thing. Functions like those used in Google Cloud and IBM Cloud, we do not have implemented between brackets yet. I completely agree with Adrian, the yet, because, well, if there is enough demand, Oracle will build it for you. That's there. And let me see. That's all the questions at this moment. So I think I've still got a couple of minutes. Yeah, I still got a couple of minutes. So for those people who have not seen the Oracle environment, I'll just give you a small step by step because I feel that there are a couple of people who have never seen Oracle Cloud before. So what you see right now in front of you is the Oracle Classic, OCI Classic, also known as the Oracle Public Cloud, also known as the Oracle Elastic Cloud. Those names are all old now, between brackets. And it's now called OCI Classic. I'm not really sure if I like the word classic because it's almost like we don't do anything with this anymore, but it's completely the contrary. There's still a lot of things going on right now. I'll show you some things. So when you log in the OCI Classic, you will see a dashboard like this. You can choose which items you want on your dashboard. So I have access to some storage, some container. Here we see the Docker container thing. I've got some Internet of Things environment integration. Anything is enabled that you have access to. So this is a demo environment, so we've got some additional stuff enabled. And now with the universal credits that we handle, the moment you get a universal credits account, most of this is enabled as well. So this lists me in a very high level the things I have. I've got 99 gigabytes available of the system. Apparently I've got some read requests available. So let's look at the database. So 3 options. I'm going to go to the console. The console basically means show me the database that are running. In this case, I've got a database running, which is the EE2 database. We use this one for a proof of concept for a company. And in this screen, you can see what your connect string is. If you are inside the Oracle Cloud, inside, let's say your application server is inside the Oracle Cloud, you just use this connection as a JDBC string, or a TNS names connection, and then you are there. Name of PDB, you see the port that has been enabled, the name, and things like that. There are some resources that are being used. And in here, I can start, stop the database, scale up, scale down, more CPUs, less CPUs, more disk space. I can't do less disk space, unfortunately. I only do more disk space on the system. There's a number of tools available. Console, Application Express is there, Enterprise Manager is there. Stop, start, scale up, scale down. You can change the access rules, SSH access. You can even replace your database with a backup. So if you have a backup in the cloud, you can just restore it and start it up again. And if you're done, you restore it again, start it up again. It's very easy for development, and it's very easy for options. Administration-wise, if you want to do a patch, you see here backups that have been enabled by default. We've got some patching. There are 2 or 3 patches available. I can look at the README. It will automatically start loading the my Oracle support for me. You can see all the patches. That's also a nice thing. You don't have to sort out which patch do I need for my environment. It's simple. You just click on patch, and I can just decide to do a pre-check, which is basically an OPatch check, or I can do a patch, which is a patch apply. And the system will just do it. Will shut down the database, apply the patch, apply it on the database level, and then starts it up again. And that's a nice thing. Last but not least, you can create snapshots of the entire database. So let's say you want to do a patching of the environment. You just click on Create Snapshot. You give it a name like this. And in the background, it will start doing a snapshot, but then in a good way. It's not like just blindfoldly take a snapshot of the disks. No, your database will be put in backup mode. That will mean that there is no write activity on the mount point that has your data files. Then it will take a snapshot. Then it will get out of backup status, and then the writes will continue to be. So your service will be fully available, and at the same time, you know that your snapshot will be fully available. So if you take a normal snapshot on VMware level, or even on ZFS level, or whatever, you are not really 100% sure that that snapshot is consistent. In this way, where you put the database in a kind of a quiet mode, then you know your snapshot will be there, and at the same time your database will still be there. So that's nice. So if the snapshot has been created, I can create a new database out of this one, or I can do a patch. If the patch fails for whatever reason, you can just restore your snapshot and you're up and running again. So without any change or setup or things like that. So that's a nice thing. Database itself is a database, 12.1, 12.2, 11.2. So from that moment on, it's just a database. So let me see if I can show you the OCI version of the environment. let me see. Let me see. So Silver saying, are you saying in OCI we can choose your own virtualization like VMware, Hyper-V, and of course Oracle? Well, Silver, they are working on enabling virtualization inside the OCI. So at this moment, the only two enabled hypervisors that are supported are Zen and KVM. So KVM was already for a long time available. Recently, they opened up Zen, and they are now looking and testing in setting up VMware and Hyper-V, or at least allowing those two. The big problem is the initial installation. So it is a quite of a big installation process to install Hyper-V or to install VMware and then making it ready for the OCI console. Bottom line, Oracle doesn't mind other people running those virtualizations on their systems. But in real life, there are two issues. One is the technical issue, who is responsible for support for the initial setup and things like that. That's step number one. Step number two is licensing. Yeah, how are we going to do the license? Is this going to be a bring your own license? How are we going to check this? Because we have partners with Microsoft and VMware as well. So those things are being sorted out, but I know from internal mailing lists that they are working and looking at it. Delivery time could be a week, could be a year. So I'm not sure how long that will take. So other thing you see on screen, let me have a look at it. Adrian already gave answer that we can use Terraform to work with Docker files. Yep. Completely supports my answer. Docker is supported on OCI. There is no GUI for it. But thank you, Adrian. There is Terraform. For those people that don't know Terraform, it's like a generic language you can use to manipulate cloud environments. So not only database clouds from Oracle, but also Amazon, Google, Azure. Do you have any other clouds? DigitalOcean, something. And the nice thing about Terraform, it's a command line language. It's like a scripting language. You create like a plugin for a certain cloud environment. So there are plugins for the Oracle Cloud available on GitHub. You can just download the provider. I think it's a Terraform provider. That's the nice name. The Terraform provider for Oracle OCI and OCI Classic is downloadable from GitHub, from the Oracle GitHub account. You can put that into Terraform, and then inside Terraform you can, and I'm saying this very easily, create me a VM which is 2 OCPUs big and has 500 gigabytes of disk space. Put it on Oracle, enter, and then Terraform in the background will do all the steps that are necessary to actually start up one of those environments. You can also check if whatever you have in Terraform is still there in the environment. And that makes it easier that if you say I want to have 2 instances on Amazon and 2 instances on Oracle, you just need to learn Terraform as a developer and everything will work out. So that's Terraform. And like Adrian says, with Terraform, you can also manipulate Docker files on the system. So that's very nice. Let me see. Need to keep track of time. Okay, Kasim, while doing patching, we need to take the confirmation from the respective application teams, but you were showing if we click patch, it applies automatically. Kasim, you're absolutely correct. When a database needs to be patched, it needs to be brought down unless you have a replication cluster set up. So in the Oracle Database Cloud, only when there are very rare exceptions, but I would say 98% of all patches, either on operating system or on the database that you need to apply, if you have a real application cluster set up, the service will be available. So one node will be brought down, it will be patched to the next version, started up again, and then the second node will be brought down, patched, and started up again. So if you have an application with a single instance, you have to tell the application, listen up, we're now down for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, depending on how long the patch takes. If you have a real application cluster environment, you don't have to tell your application anything. The only thing is that one node will be brought down, but the other node will still be there, read-write. So you can continue to run on your system. That's the high available setup. In theory, you can also do a database with a data guard setup. That's also enabled on the cloud. And you can do a switch over with data guard. You can point your application to the other data guard setup, which is now the primary. Then you can patch the standby, you can start it up again, do a switch over again, and then patch the other one. So that's also an option. I think that's more of a manual action. The rack option will be done automatically. The other one, the data guard, will have some more manual work involved. but then again, if you have a good DBA, then they know how it works. That's the question from Kasim perfectly. Let me see. Okay, then I'll log into the Oracle OCI. And the nice thing is, well, I'm not sure if it's a nice thing or not, that the developers for OCI Classic and developers for OCI are apparently two different teams. So it looks a little bit different on the system. So as you can see, OCI is a bit different. If we go to the database section, there are 3 database runnings. It's actually my section. And in OCI, you have something called a compartment. So here we have a couple of compartments. We have POCs for Oracle Health Insurance, is one of mine. We have PTS US, PTS LA, LAD. We have an APAC workshop, for example. I think Adrian uses it a lot. And if you want to work with this, the LaunchDB system looks a little bit different than you see in OCI. So it's a very long form. It's not a 3-step wizard. If you want to, you can do a database name. You can select in which availability domain you want. So I've got 3 availability domains in Ashburn. At the same time, I can say I want to put this on Frankfurt in Europe, for example. I can launch a database here, and I've got the 3 availability domains for Frankfurt. So those availability domains are connected to each other with a very fast line. I think the last I heard was 1 terabit, but they always want to have enough capacity. So if we need more power, they upgrade to a 5 terabit or faster. And here you can actually say, what is my shape? A VM, 16 OCPU, 2 OCPUs. Do I want to have a cluster? Then I select 2 nodes. And here you go for storage size, for example, and then you go all the way down to what kind of license do you have? What is the SSH? What kind of network do I want in the cloud? What do we have? Database name, database version. Here, PDB name, passwords, automatic backup, and things like that. Then I click on, we have advanced nowadays. Oh yeah, character set. Yeah, click on launch database system, and then it will be created for me. So those are basically the GUI differences between OCI and OCI Classic. The bare metal ones, please. So let me see. I think I've got some access in Ashburn, if I'm correct. Let's say, and I'm going for my own thing. And I say launch database system, tests, availability domain. I think I've got one here in 3. Bare metal options, and then I can choose a shape. So bare metal high I/O, dense I/O, rack local storage. This one will be removed, so this one is being deprecated. Exadata, quarter, half, and full. Those are the 3 options, basically the options I have. Well, in this test domain, I don't have any access to any Exadata ones. I have access to either one of these 2. I think I've got access to a dense one. Number of CPU cores that are enabled, I can go all the way up to, well, a lot, I guess. It's 36. By the way, if you look at the name here, for those people who are very deep in, you see bare metal dense I/O and then a number that says 1 in this case. It means that this is the first type of server we released, and that's an X5. The next system that we will release will be an X7, will be a number 2. So you get a bm.denseio2, which means it's an X7 dot the number of OCPUs that we have. I'm not sure if I can show you that in the instances here. Let me quickly see. Bare metal here. Oh, I first have to select availability domain. Okay, availability domain, this one. And operating system. Let me do Oracle Linux, bare metal. Here we have. So here I have, this is infrastructure as a service. This is not a database. These settings will be released on database level, but well, those are always, I just say trailing a little bit, like a month or 2 months. So they first want to get the whole infrastructure up and running without any problems, and then they do the database side of things. Here you see the BM standard 2, which means the 2nd generation of service, and it's got a maximum of 52 OCPUs on the system. Here you also see a bare metal GPU version. So we've got GPUs, graphical processing units, now available in the bare metal systems for those people that want to do coin mining if you want to, or have other graphical, very intensive things on the system. together with the old systems 1.36 and dense I/O and high I/O, standard I/O on the system. So that's it on the system. I hope, Silver, that was what you were looking for on the system. So bare metal, at this moment in the database side, only the X5 with 36 OCPUs, 512 gigabytes memory, and then a choice of 4 NVMe cards of 3.2 terabytes or 9 NVMe cards, 9 pieces of 3.2 terabytes. And these new systems, they will have 4 NVMe cards of, no, that one has been scratched. They only have 9 NVMe, God, all those numbers, 8 NVMe cards of 6.4 terabytes. So the newer versions, the X7, will only be released on 8 NVMe cards of 6.4 terabytes. And the older ones, the X5 systems, still had a choice of 4 NVMe cards, 3.2 terabytes, or 9 NVMe cards, 3.2 terabytes. So those were the older systems. Less OCPUs and less payment on the system. Okay, I think it's now 1 minute after 11, end of my monthly session. I want to show you the last slide I have on the system. Let me see, I'm going to make this bigger and I'm going to share it to you. I hope I've now shared things. I think so. So that was what I had on this system. So that was it for today. Thank you very, very much for watching. It was a pleasure having those questions, and really thank you very much for those questions. I would not have known what I had to do this whole hour without your questions. So very, very much appreciated. What do we have today for those people who are interested at 11 o'clock UTC? So it's in about an hour. We have Stephen doing the PL/SQL 101 office hour. And we have Dan McGann on JavaScript in the Oracle database, which is at 8 o'clock UTC. So that's on 9 o'clock Amsterdam time or whatever time zone you are in. Tomorrow, Christian talks about .NET and Visual Studio, if that is very interesting to you. And we have more, so please check AskTOM.oracle.com for more information. So for now, if you have any questions, please let me know on my email address. I think I've got it here somewhere. Ooh, here it is. robert.pastijn@oracle.com. I will try to host these sessions once every month on the first Monday of the month. Unfortunately, yesterday I had a day off, so I couldn't do it on that time. So next session is on every first Monday of the month, 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'll try to update you with some information and answer questions that are available. So for the last time, I'll have a look at Q&A. I get a lot of thank yous. Well, thank you very much back as well. This ends the session for today. Thank you very much, and hopefully talk to you next time.